Welcome to The Recurring Plot, presented by CurbNTurf. On this show, we interview agritourism farmers, authors, leaders, and influencers who share their insights on growing and monetizing your agritourism business. Here's your host, Dustin Reed.
Hi, this is Dustin from CurbNTurf. You're listening to The Recurring Plot. Today we're talking to Rawlins about his innovative idea to help the RV industry and also agribusinesses thrive in their communities through his company, CurbNTurf. So how you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing good.
Why don't you just describe a little bit about your history, about where you came from, your family, some of your interests?
So I basically was raised in Pennsylvania and in a community where Penn State resides, and State, funny town name for college being there, but it's an area of the country that's fairly populated with a lot of teachers, educational type providers who are learning, but it's also surrounded by a great deal of agriculture type cities. And so it was a great place to grow up, great place to be outside all the time, great place to be enjoying things grow and be part of that community. And so that's kind of where I grew up, and I kind of the outdoors, of farming, and of just communities in general. So that's kind of where I was raised. I was one of 7 brothers and sisters, and we would travel cross country to visit our grandparents in California. And so that's where we first started to enjoy the opportunities to go and use travel trailers and RVs to do that. So that was the first investment in my time and going cross country, seeing the different parts of the country, seeing the joys of experiencing what's out there, kind of not quite as an adventurous as those in the old, when there was nothing out there, but it's still an adventure and still fun to do. Right. And so that's kind of how I got started in my love of the outdoors. Interest in business, and as that interest grew, I felt a degree in accounting would be a benefit to me, and so I went in and got a master's degree in accounting at BYU in Provo. So, and they're rated one of the top 3 usually, so the second or the third usually rated in the nation for accounting. And so I got my degree in accounting, and then I went out to work with my father, business, which at the time was when the archiving and scanning was becoming a popular thing. So did that, customized our software to support the needs of the visually impaired, creating books that they need for those who can't see very well. And I've been doing that for over 20 years, 25 plus years.
So obviously, with being a business owner with your large print company, how has that helped your endeavors with other business interests, or how does that help you?
Well, I mean, in any business you're in, you're going to learn things. A lot of what you learn is obviously you can make things happen with effort and dedication, but a good portion of it has to do with timing, opportunities that are available to you that weren't necessarily certain at another time. So just taking advantage of timing, opportunities that come your way, because there's a ton of different, if I had gone for my accounting degree, if I had gone into one of the big 6 at the time of accounting firms, I potentially would have been rubbing up against thousands of different types of businesses and different industries, and so you never really know where you're going to end up. And it just so happened that because of where I made my choices, I ended up visually impaired, which is potentially a market I never would have known about had I chosen to go a different way. I would have been potentially in a completely different field, different actions, different marketplaces.
Right. So how that lead you to CurbNTurf, and what is CurbNTurf? Can you kind of explain the backstory
Sure.
about that?
Yeah. Well, CurbNTurf is basically an Airbnb service for those with RVs. So the RVers have their RV rigs and they need some place to take them, and they're selling 100,000+ RV units a year, and there's not an equal development taking place on the side of places to park them. And usually you'll see the RV parks, which are crowded, sardines, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're enjoyable. A lot of the people you're going to rub shoulders with in the RV community are fun to be with, but there's a lack of development on the side of places to take your RV. So CurbNTurf is like Airbnb in that you have private property owners who are going to rent out their land that RVers can come and use and rent and stay on your property for short periods of time for their vacation needs or for traveling across country. And so so basically CurbNTurf is a means of helping entrepreneurial property owners like farmers or agritourism type farmers take advantage of receiving more recurring passive income and leveraging our platform to do that, to bring those two groups together into a single need.
So what kind of gave you the idea for CurbNTurf? Obviously you saw a problem, but what kind of led into that, or what
Yeah.
kind of gave you, what sparked that idea?
Well, because of youth, we had gone cross country and using a travel trailer, so I had experiences with that. I think my wife had some experiences with I'm not sure if it was an RV or not, but after having those experiences, we had a desire as a unit to experience that ourselves, and so we went out looking for rigs that we could purchase and use to go and enjoy on vacation. And a lot of those rigs were 40-foot fifth wheels, massive beast, full. And a great opportunity to go have fun and have all the conveniences of life right there at your fingertips. But when knowing the challenges I had even back in 1980, going across country with my father and mother and family, you'd use the AAA services to get maps. You'd use probably some of the AAA books or other books for figuring out where the RV parks were. And so there was a lot of manual processing to try to figure out where and what you're going to do and where you're going to stay. And then once you got the parks themselves, even back then, driving a travel trailer was fairly tight getting through the parks. And so even your size of rig, even a challenge back then, because obviously the development of RVs even back then was growing beyond what it was initially in its size and abilities. And so recognizing these things are massive and that would be a challenge to go to some of the parks I went to growing up, I asked the salesperson, well, where do you take these rigs once you buy them? And he said, well, we have 1980 inside. We got some books you can buy. And so I realized that there was obviously a disconnect in the market for RVers and their needs, and that was where the first desire for me to fix the problem came up. It was probably about 3 years later after I moved to Idaho that I determined that now's the time. I just needed to jump in and do it, and so that's where it all started. Just that desire to go on vacation, the recognition that there wasn't really a service that at the time provided what we needed. Real tool that would be a benefit to someone and tie into their needs for their rig size and getting to some place without having to try to find an address, going down back roads, getting stuck. That stuff is a challenge as you are out there RVing.
You mentioned several different things that I think we'll touch on a little bit later, talking about some of the tools actually we offer, because you've addressed those problems that are common with RVers. And CurbNTurf actually provides solutions for those, and those sort of things that we'll get to here shortly. But can you speak on how long has CurbNTurf been in business?
Been out there since 2019, and probably before that. That's when we officially incorporated. And so we've been around a while. We've been developing our services and our product.
Those that you don't know, I'm actually the UX UI designer for CurbNTurf, so I just basically do a lot of the front end type stuff and make it look nice, function well. We also have two other developers, one that's basically handles the app, and we'll be talking to him next week. His name's Scott Henscheid. And we also have another developer that was hired on. He was the first employee, Jed Smith, and he handled the website. He handles a lot of the overall back end stuff, mostly on the website. Obviously, CurbNTurf, we've been around since 2019. We have competitors, one of those being Harvest Host. But can you describe the differences between Harvest Host and CurbNTurf?
Sure. Harvest Host is more of a subscription-based platform. At least initially with Boondockers Welcome, they joined with Harvest Host, but at least initially they were kind of focused on meeting each other in the community. So we're looking at RVers who are going to help other RVers with the need of parking. And so that was, and just providing a service, and the subscription was a means of knowing who's out there and where you can take your rig. And then the coordination of scheduling, going and staying at the places that are available. And it's fairly similar still today, even with Harvest Host. The Harvest Host platform is taking it more towards farms or golf courses, places like that. But it's still a subscription service. There's really no compensation to the owner of the property, or to the business, or to the farm, or to the golf course. It's just basically they allow someone to come and stay on their property, and as a result of that stimulus, basically, of feeling like you're getting something for free, the response is you feel obligated to buy something from them. So if they're a farm and they have something they're selling, obviously you would feel obligated to buy something from the farmer just because that's just the stimulus. You just feel obligated to. So it's a completely different sales mechanism. Our mechanism is more of a buy it as you need it. So basically, you reserve a spot. That's when you're paying for something, and there's no fee for listing a site. There's no fee for pushing a site. It's only when a transaction takes place that any kind of compensation takes place between the lister or the guest or even us as a service provider. And we just take a piece of that, and then we have some additional tweaks in there to try to improve upon the open community who's participating in that to try to benefit them as well. So it's not just three people or three entities who are being compensated. It's not just the property owner and the guest and the host, but it's those who are providing the information. And they could be a guest, they may not be a guest at the time that someone else is using it. They're probably not a guest, but they're going to be compensated as well for providing us with information on our service. There's other services out there besides Harvest Toast, but all those services have been designed and built on a platform for a different market besides RVers. And then they've tweaked their services to include the RVers after the fact. And so a good portion of what they're providing, although it's information and it's helpful and it gives you an opportunity to rent something out, it's not tied specifically to the needs of RVers. They're not providing, they give you an address for an instance, whereas we'll give you a GPS coordinate and a turn-by-turn GPS, which is, you really can't rely on addresses. They're not easily found. You put them in Google, they'll take you to the wrong place. So you really need to divest yourself of an address and go directly to a GPS. And although that might be a little more challenging for our users to put that into the system, but it's not really hard. It's just opening up an app and saying I'm standing where I'm supposed to be, and then it captures the GPS coordinates. So we make it as easy as possible. But on the end side, the RVer driving down with a 40-foot rig is not going to hit a 90-degree turn onto a bridge that they can't make that turn. You're going to have to call a tow truck company to try to get them out somehow. And so, great expense, cost, time lost, embarrassment, even potential damage to a rig or driving down a road you're not supposed to. So there is some real needs RVers have, even looking at spaces that you can't even fit in. That's a waste of time. So, if we jumped into some of the features, that's just one of the things we do is we allow you to list in the garage the rigs and the different configurations that you have, so that you can, when you're looking and you've chosen which rig you're going to be using for your search, it's going to only give you the information that's relevant to you and to your rig.
So like you mentioned, we do have a cool feature that's called the garage, where you can actually make your own configurations, and then based on those configurations, it's basically a filter. And so you'll be able to filter out listings and other things based on your rig size, and also certain presets or qualifications that you're looking for, even when you're looking for a spot. You were looking for an RV for a while, because when I first met you, you were kind of, well, you talk about that. I mean, I know that you were testing out some RVs, and what did you finally land on?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's going to be a little bit different and unique, and potentially what they choose that fits their needs. My father-in-law had probably a 30-footer fifth wheel, and so we used that. We had a 1-ton truck. We used that. Went down to the Grand Canyon with our kids, 4 kids, in a pickup truck. Dean's in the truck. They didn't want to drive in the truck for another 2 months. They didn't want to be in the vehicle at all. It's kind of funny. It's a larger rig. You have to be conscious of where you are, and I had no problem with that. But my wife, she's a little stressed about activity, and so we decided to go a little smaller, which works well for her. She can drive it, and she has comfort in it. It's more of a van, Class B, and gives us flexibility in where we go for that reason. So probably a little bit larger. Someday I'll probably upgrade to something bigger at some point, but that I have right now.
That's awesome, because I also taking your RV out. I love it. It's pretty cool, and I have a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun as well with my wife in it.
And there's just something about RVing where you don't have to. It's not like you're packing a suitcase. You have to unpack every time you get to the hotel. You got to find your stuff. Most of the stuff is already in its place in the RV, and a good portion of it's already in the RV. So if you want to take a vacation on a weekend, just head out and do something. You just grab the clothes you're going to wear, and everything else usually is in the RV. So you might head by the store and pick up food on your way as well. So there's some conveniences in that. You got a fridge, you got a microwave, you got a shower, bathroom. It's all there. So you pull over, do whatever you want.
You basically have the convenience of home, but while you're on the road, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of the reasons why people love it. Because you mentioned earlier that there's tons of RVs being manufactured or sold, but not enough places for them to go. We've seen that through our research that RV sales also going up in during COVID years. What does that mean to you? Why would RV sales go up, especially when people were not allowed outside? They're, we're quarantined.
Yeah, I think control of one's time and abilities. So you're not at the whims of a pilot strike. You're not at the whims of the airlines who choose to park you on a runway all day long because they prefer to have one plane. That's down compared to making them all late, and so it looks better on their stats and it does better with reporting to the government. But it completely kills your mood when you're stuck on a plane all day long, hot, and have to, cramped and the toilets are overflowing, I'm sure. No food. They don't give you anything. They have no compensation either. They just act like you have to. Oh well, it's your problem, not ours. So I mean that type of thing. The lack of employees that the hotels have. They can't get their rooms clean. They can't provide you the services they used to provide, and that goes across the board. You got the cars. They can't provide you cars. The cars they do provide you are old because they weren't producing cars because the chips are down, and so they're basically falling apart. So across the board, it's a completely different environment, and so having control yourself, knowing that you have control of your environment, whatever's in, if you're sick inside your own place. If you're not going to be coming across someone else who's sick, whatever it is, it's all control. And then it's enjoyable. You're going to places that you would otherwise fly over. You're able to see the world and explore and be able to be part of what's around you. So there's a great deal of limit in that. Honestly, not everyone's going to have that joy, especially with 500 plus thousand RVs sold every year, because they're going to find a lot of scheduling issues because of the inability to get a place to take their RV, or as they're going across country, they don't have any place to go, and so there's stress. And so we're trying to resolve some of that with the app. In addition, outside of just going back to the app, outside of just we were the main service, which is providing a place to park it. We want it to be a tool. And
I completely agree. There's definitely reasons why people during the COVID years were looking to get out, right? Because we're also cooped up in our houses and our offices or whatever, couldn't leave. And then a lot of people were yearning for that just connection to outdoors too, is my opinion, just because, that was something that was missing for a good almost 2 years. And so that's one of the reasons why you have those RV sales going up, for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, just because the airlines a lot of people weren't trusting the airlines, right, at that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, even today,
know about COVID.
Yeah, even today it's still the same. I mean, I think it's related to the COVID situation, and they probably got rid of people or down on their employee staff or whatever it is, but they're still having issues today. And maybe it's partly the way that they've changed some of the regulations that state how they treat their customers, but it's not a pleasant environment. I mean, you may have a pleasant environment, and that's great if you do, but if you have a bad one, it's a bad one.
So you have all these circumstances or all these external forces where people didn't have control, like you were saying, and now people they have an RV. It's in, like you were saying, a controlled environment to where they can dictate where what they're going to eat, how they're going to eat, where they're going to go. And they have the confinements of home, but on the road. So they're be able to spend more time with family, be outdoors, and control their environment. So that's probably one of the big reasons why RV sales shot up.
Yeah.
Before COVID, it was a problem of finding places. Now it's probably even a bigger problem, just because you have people wanting to leave and to explore. Not only that, you have more millennials wanting van life kind of thing, because that's even more people looking for places to stay. How do we solve that as a company with CurbNTurf?
Well, it's the providing new spaces that aren't part of the process, the normal process. So it's a means of extending aid to the community outside of those who are already in the community. So we're talking about individuals that aren't necessarily RVers. They can be, but aren't necessarily RVers, who are specifically agritourism is a great example, because you have farmers who have a lot of land who are seeking other means to provide diversified income and a revenue stream, and our service lends well and ties in well to what they're trying to do. They're able to increase their profits on a recurring and stream of income that doesn't take a great deal of effort on their side, just some opening of some land, something by the shop, by the barn, And if they wanted to include more amenities for those, then they might have more interest from people for, for instance, power, maybe some water. If they really are successful, they can upgrade it to some kind of a connection to a dump site. Even then, they still have access to fishing, sports, national parks. There's all sorts of things that a lot of the farmers are near that people are seeking to enjoy, and it ties in well to that. And then on top of that, our service also has more of a, not just listing your property, has the ability to a la carte, so you can list other things as well. And so there's ability to upsell those who are coming, not just to your agritourism, but also to stay overnight. Now you have opportunities to do beyond that. You can sell them packages to people who might take them out fishing, for instance, or maybe have an amusement park nearby. So there's all sorts of different things you can upsell and cross-sell these people on. So as a means of revenue stream, provide them with a great deal of opportunity for diversification and an increased revenue stream for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it pairs perfectly to, agribusinesses and agritourism in general.
Mm-hmm.
So then these RVers or travelers can look for specific activities or whatever it is that they're looking for. They're going to be able to find those types of things on our platform. What are things that you've seen on our platform, the kind of listings that we have on CurbNTurf?
Llama farms and breakfasts, I believe, different types of off-grid type locations. We have like in-city locations. So obviously people are going to have need of getting somewhere, and so they need a place to stay on their way there. So all sorts of different things on our service.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we have anything urban to like wineries, vineyards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know that your father-in-law is also on our platform. He has a vineyard as well. So,
it's a vineyard and a winery.
Yeah.
Yep.
What are some frustrations that people incur of owning an RV?
Probably the biggest frustration is where to take it. You're stuck on the way because you're afraid of taking it anywhere because it's so large. They might actually, I've seen people who will go out on their pickup truck and scout out where they're going to go just to make sure they can make it there. Okay. So, with technology and with the ability to map out where you're going to be by GPS turn by turn, it shouldn't be an issue. It should be something you can handle. And so that's what we're trying to, those are the types of things that we're trying to aid and provide as tools to people. Also, because they do provide all the services you need, you provide your water, they provide your dump site, internal to the rig, they provide payment. But because of all that, you need to replenish, you need to sponge some of the stuff that you're collecting. And so dump sites, tools for dump sites, tools for fresh water, tools for propane. You need to refill propane tanks too, because you're providing some power and water heating and all that stuff. So first has all those on there, and none of those are anything that you would have to pay for. They're all free to be accessed. List ones that you find on there because it's an open community environment. So as you're RVing and you find services that aren't listed on ours, you can add them to that. And you might find that individuals who are RVing are truly needing that information and thankful for it, and so much so that they'll donate money. So there's a donation platform on our service too, so that you may receive compensation for listing that information as a thank you for doing so. And outside that, we still we have activities as well. So any types of different recreational type activities you might want to list, you can also list those on there as well. So all those things are available on our service. On top, there's other features too. I don't know if you want me to get into those. But
let's talk about those things that you were talking about earlier, because there's good points. Just because when you're owning an RV, you need to know where the dump locations are, where where you could get propane, and you could actually see all that information, like you were saying, on our website.
Mm-hmm.
You could download the app.
Right.
So if anyone that has Android could go to the Google Play Store to download our app. We're also available on iOS devices. So if you have an Apple device, just go ahead and you could go to the App Store and download the app. It's CurbNTurf, so it's CurbN as in Nancy, and then turf, TURF. We have over 1,000 what we call points of interest. So those are basically what Aaron was talking about earlier. Those are going to be your dump sites. We have rest areas. We have where to get propane, fresh water. So we have lots of POIs. Yep. Rest stops. So we have lots of points of interest, so is what we call them internally. And so that way, you could search and you could plan your route based on, you know, your destination. So if you're going from A to Z, you know, in between you're going to have different stops. So if you need to get your a dump station, or if you need to stay at night or whatever, you could plan that ahead, because we also have boondocking sites, several, like thousands of boondocking sites as
Hmm.
well,
Right.
which is huge.
Hmm. And you may find, and
All
some of those too are things that we've listed. And so if you wanted
mhm,
to, if an individual goes to a place and they want to become caretaker, is what we call it, if they are responsible for those listings. So if they go to a site and want to become in charge of it, they become the caretaker from Teddy. We list ours as Teddy. So if it's a Teddy site, you can become a caretaker, or you can list your own site that's not listed on our service at all. And then
yep,
at that point, you become a potential individual who might receive some donations as a result of the listings that you're putting up on there.
yep. Which is I think it's a cool feature, just because then it gets the community involved. 'Cause they want to have like a tool, like you were saying,
Right.
because, you know, I've seen RVers, they have like 2 or 3 different apps that they're using, you know, just to plan their trip. You
Right.
know, we're at CurbNTurf, what we're trying to do is consolidate every tool and put it all in one platform, and
Right.
put it into our app.
Right.
That's one of the things I love about our service. So another feature that we have on our app is a checklist, and that's pretty important. And can you describe the checklist feature on the app, what that entails? Or
Yeah, especially with big rigs where you have all sorts of things. You're connecting things to your rig. Like the power. You're connecting water. You might be connecting a dump connection to connect your vehicle to the rig. You have slides. You have lights. You have things inside that you might have to strap down. So there's a whole bunch of different things you got to do in preparation for leaving or after you've arrived. And it's helpful to have a checklist just to make sure you don't forget anything. Don't forget to take your tire stops out, put them away. Whatever it is, on the checklist, and then you can just go through and check it, make sure that you've done it all on your process of arriving or on your process of leaving. That's
yep.
basically the concept behind the checklist. It's free. It's able to be used. You can customize it to your needs and your rig. So that's the idea behind the checklist.
Yep. So it's a really cool feature. We have specific lists, or we have a list that will already generate for you. You can actually edit that or create your own, like Aaron mentioned, which is important because every rig's different, and so then that way you can have different lists for different rigs. So you could actually associate that with your garage as well. You
Hmm.
can, if you know that, you have a certain hookup, then you're going to have certain, checklists or certain things that you have to do for that specific rig.
Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
lot of things, a lot of combinations you could do, even just with the garage and checklist portion
Right.
of our
Right.
app.
Then you mentioned too that you have the planner where you're able to plan out a trip.
So what can you describe our trip planner, what that entails?
It is basically the ability to plan out a trip, and so you're able to see how many miles between each stop you're making, record those so you can know what to expect, where it is located, and it's all tied together. It could be something on the platform or off the platform. We'll still record it and on the trip and the process of planning. Again, it's free, so it doesn't cost you anything. So, in essence, we're trying to make it into a tool, to make it so that as an RVer, you're able to feel confident as you go out and experience the world and explore. And
Right.
I think too, on the community aspect of what we do and the individuals who will be posting information online, a lot of basically today anywhere you go, you have individuals or companies who are asking you to rate whatever, rate this person, rate this product, rate this seller. And one of the challenges that I've had, using different services is that there's usually not a blind rating taking place. So a lot of the services that you take applications on, you're going to be rating the host, or the host could be rating the guest, but they both are able to see each other live, rate each other, which takes away from the ability to be truthful. And so in our service, and on top of that, they're asking you to do all this rating without any kind of compensation. So we've set up our services for trying to get as much valid, useful, truthful information as we can. So any rating that takes place on a blind rating system, so that the host and the guest are rating without knowing what each other has done. And
Mhm.
if there is something that you feel is truthful, then you can always make a request at CurbNTurf. We'll go and we'll arbitrate that and look into it, and we can obviously change it. But for the most part, we're just trying to create an environment where someone doesn't have to feel like they're going to be attacked as a result of what they say. Because I've been to places like Airbnb where I'm taller, and so I can see on top of the fridge. I can see it's dusty, very dusty, dark dust. But the person who's renting the place is probably short, can't see that, and I won't say anything because if I say that, they might take that as a negative comment and be angry at me for whatever reason. I don't know. Some people are funny that way, and whereas I'm just trying to be a helpful commentary, trying to help them out, and so our system is designed to try to make that process open, so you feel open to do that. You have the public comments, you have the private comments. They're all given before anyone sees any of the comments that are made on the other side. You can always ask for arbitration if you feel it's unfair what has been said. And then on top of that, we are a portion of the money that's collected for the reservation is given back to the guests when they do the rating, so that there is some compensation and a thank you for actually taking the time to give us a rating. Right. So there's not many places that do that because you really should be compensated because you're providing information back to us, and so we've set that up to work that way as well.
Yeah, it's valuable information. So I know I've done this, and I'm sure others have, where the only time I'm actually rating something is based on the bad experience I have.
Right.
Like if I get a product and it's not working, then I let that seller or whoever know that it's broken down and not to buy it or whatever.
Right.
So their ratings in general or reviews can also be skewed towards just the negative, just because that's how I do it. But if I knew someone was going to compensate me for doing a rating, then I'd be more likely to actually give an honest rating or give my opinion of my stay or the product, whatever it was. And that's one of the cool things that we have with our service is that we have what's called CurbNTurf cash, where we give a portion of that money to guests once they make that rating, because we do value that information. We want to make sure that it is a community based, and then we're able to have the most accurate information possible on the platform.
Right. And the other thing that we've done to that extent as well is that people are busy and they may choose not to rate, and that's not a reflection of a negative rating. That's, in my mind, a reflection of a good rating. If someone's gone through some place and they have nothing bad to say about it, so they haven't taken the time to do anything to rate them, I count that as a positive rating. And so we'll do the same thing in our rating structure, so that those ratings in which someone says nothing, which some people aren't verbose, they don't have a lot of things to say, but they appreciate what you've done for them, but they may not say it, and so we'll count that as a positive rating as part of the calculation that goes into the rating system as well.
Yeah, which is huge, just because then you don't get people like me that don't rate, and and then if they do rate, it might be negative, and it's counting against you. So that's just a way to keep things honest,
right? Exactly.
For both hosts and guests. Where do you see CurbNTurf in the near future, whether it's 3 or 5 years down the road?
Well, it always takes time to grow business. We're new. My hope down the road is it's some term that's as common as Airbnb, and that people recognize that that's what use for a tool for RVing, for finding the things you need as an RV, and getting to experience truly what exploring is about, and going out beyond what you would have felt comfortable doing before, and going out further. So that's my hope, and that obviously we have tools. We'll make them more robust as we move forward, but we have ideas for a ton more tools and features in the future, which obviously will come as we grow and have the ability and the means to do that. So,
right, yeah, because that's a key thing. Is another thing that we need to talk about is that we're a smaller company, so we can pivot based on the needs of the RVers or our hosts, because we want to make sure we represent them to the fullest. It's just one of those things where we can. If there's a certain feature that we need, we'll work on it. There's sometimes that becomes the priority, and then we focus on that. I know that's happened with the trip planner. We've had that with the checklist. There's lots of things that kind of come to our head as a team, and we're able to implement those ideas, which is cool.
Yeah.
Well, so you being a property owner yourself, you've hosted people. How have RVers benefit just by staying on your land, or what kind of joys have you had just by hosting people?
It's honestly there is interaction that takes place. We've created a service that we feel that you don't have to interact if you don't want to. You can obviously meet them as a host. You can meet the guests who are coming and from them. They're all very interesting. I mean, I find people interesting. Their life stories and their interests in what they're doing and why they're going around the country. So they're all the ones that I've hosted have been very friendly and very appreciative of having a place to stay outside the beaten path of RV parks and I've been blessed myself to be living in a place that's fairly open in agritourism, but in an agro community, a heavily farmed area. So it's open. It's a beautiful, quiet area, and so people enjoy coming here to enjoy nature as well. So it's been fun to share that with other people as well, the openness and nature that's around me.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's important because I've actually benefited from that as well because that's where CurbNTurf headquarters is at. So I've seen people come in and you give a tour and they'll make little books and stuff just because you have that printing business and stuff. I've met a Dominican, which we
Mm-hmm.
still remain friends,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of been cool to make connections,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them could be lifelong, some of them could be, depending on the person you are. If you don't want to have that connection, that's fine too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
people, there's all different walks of people.
There are all sorts of people, absolutely.
Yep.
So I mean, you can interact, you can approve reservations that come through, or you can choose to have it so that it automatically approves them, more like a hotel, and the directions, and because of the GPS coordinates and where it's located and what you provide to them once they sign up, you can let them know that you're ready to arrive whenever you're ready to arrive. You have everything you need to know, and that you won't be, it won't be.
Yeah.
You'll be by yourself and you just make yourself at home, but
Right.
no need for interaction with us. I mean, there are all sorts of different ways of doing it. So
Yeah, and you could do a combination of both if you want, because you have
absolutely,
full
yeah,
flexibility in what you want to do.
that's right.
Yeah.
I'm sure though,
So
as a means of cross selling or upselling, I'm sure a good number of people will choose to do that interaction. But
right.
and
Right.
it's just one way of going through life is you have to interact with people.
Yeah. So that's been my experience with RVers. They're generally, most of them I've experienced are actually social people.
Yeah,
They want to know your background. They want to know your story, and so they'll talk your ear off if you let them. And so
yeah,
it's a fun group. It's a
yeah.
fun community.
Hmm.
So obviously you live, in a farm community, out in the country, as they say. So
Hmm.
what have you noticed with agriculture in general, like the industry as a whole, as of right now? What have you
Yeah.
seen?
Well, there's obviously a struggle more, and that's always been the case. You always have been reliant upon the seasons, and it's cyclical as to when it's good and when it's bad, and so there's always that. But now we got additional challenges on top of that with receiving, getting, suppose if you're willing to pay the higher prices, you can get most anything, but challenges of getting fertilizer. On top of that, you still even have droughts in some areas. You have heavy rains in other areas. So it seems like there's a greater deal of that challenge that they're facing, and trying to provide, because it's all based on cash flow and it all comes in a certain time of year. And so they're, in a good year, you're just, you're living off of the cash that comes when you harvested until the next time you harvest. And obviously when you have a bad year, then you're living off of what you've harvested for 2 years or 3 years. And so the whole idea behind agritourism, behind CurbNTurf, is to be able to diversify yourself so that you're receiving a revenue stream and cash flow during the times that you're not harvesting. And because
Yep.
you can obviously, if you're too busy to feel like you can deal with people at the time that you're doing harvesting, just turn off, block out those times on your calendar, and you won't have people come to your place then and anyway. But during those other times of year, you're going to want to have some additional ways of making some money, some ways of upselling
Yep.
them, some ways of increasing your cash flow. So that's kind of what the CurbNTurf's about,
Yep.
and as a means of a tool to help you do that.
I grew up on a dairy on a farm. I've seen that with my grandpa where because he had a dairy farm, so he had a dairy plus he was farming
Hmm.
and so he did have diversification. He bought land. He was smart. I could see where he could actually be able to utilize even diversify more of his income or of his revenue stream just by having a tool like CurbNTurf. And can you explain how a business can have diversification through CurbNTurf?
Yeah, especially if you're an agritourism business and you're bringing people in the surrounding urban areas to your place to provide them an opportunity to share your love. Really, is what it comes down to. You share your love of farming, or whatever customized experiences you've created for them. So that's something that agritourism is about, and what we're providing is an opportunity for them to come not just during the day, but to be there overnight, and that provides you with new opportunities that you don't have otherwise. You can sell them breakfasts, you can sell them packages because they're not just there anymore for yours. You can expand beyond your own property and include other services that are outside your property in tours and hunting opportunities and national forest opportunities, and you can paid service, there's all sorts of different things you can do, and even making money off of other services because you can take a piece of the pie of someone else who might be a professional guide for hunting, so you don't necessarily have to be that person, but if you're familiar with the people in your community, you make that available and you can upsell the people on different things like that. So it truly provides you with or even utilizing your own services too. So maybe you can incorporate some of the things you're growing. Maybe you have a strawberry patch, and that's something that you can incorporate into the meals that you're providing, or maybe you're able to do kind of a chef thing where you're teaching them how to cook some of the things you're growing, and that's something that you wouldn't have the time to do during your day when you have a whole bunch of people coming to your agritourism business. But as you beyond that, and you're focusing on the off hours, then different things are opened up as a result of that. If that's something you're interested in doing, you don't have to, but it's just an option that's available. Right. So
yeah, because those are good ways. It's cross-selling, upselling. We have that feature set within the app. So as a host, you could specify, what it is that you're going to be providing to those guests. And so then that way it makes it more customer-friendly experience, customized experience to those guests, and they're gonna, it makes it way easy. And you, as the host, will get 85%, of anything that goes, any transaction that goes through the app regarding your listing. So
right, yeah, and you get it all up front too. It's not like you have to remind them what it's going to cost and try to get a way of collecting it. It's all paid for up front. We're basically acting as a clearinghouse. We got the money, we're holding it until it's completed. We give it back to you. So it's risk free in that regard because you don't have to worry about that aspect of the sell. So it's nice that way.
We are always looking for hosts. That's always going to be something we'll be looking for. Same, somewhere with Airbnb, they're always going to be looking for listings. We're the same way. We want to provide these RVers because that's, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, it's a huge problem that we're seeing with the RV industry. There's not enough places for them to go, and we need more listings. We need more places, more opportunities for these RVers.
One of the interesting things, at least in my mind, is the difference between renting out your home and renting out a little parcel of grass or of asphalt or gravel. Is you don't have the same challenges of destruction, of renovation, of having to buy knickknacks to make it look a certain way, electronics and TVs and services that way. So it's a great, in my mind, is a great way of making some revenue without the expenses associated with an Airbnb or renting out your own home, and the wear and tear associated with it, because grass keeps growing, dirt keeps, you can't do much damage to dirt. You can level it out again if you needed to. So I mean, there's great benefit in my mind as a means of a revenue stream and perpetual that doesn't provide in other marketplaces.
Right. There's definitely less risk involved, right? When you're involving an RVer who has basically their home on wheels, or the comforts of home, and they're bringing it to a parking spot. Right. That's all they're doing is parking. And so, you're not having to provide, like you were saying, extra amenities or extra things that potentially are going to get damaged, or there's extra costs associated with that. So that's
Hmm.
huge for a host to have, just because then it's more money in your pocket, right?
Hmm.
And that's
Right.
something you could actually put back towards your business. That's something you could put back towards offering other experiences to guests as well. It's just
Hmm.
another way to diversify your income as well. And because we talk about that, the diversification, and it's huge. It's
Hmm.
important, especially when you're living in our type of economy where there's inflation. Your dollar doesn't go as far as it did. You're going to have, in valleys where the economy is great, and that means it's, good for a lot of people. And
Hmm.
there's, where those dips and ebbs and flows kind of thing.
Right.
So, and then, like you mentioned, farmers probably struggle with that more than anyone, just because
Hmm.
they're so reliant on prices. They're so reliant
Hmm.
on like other things out, that they can't control, whether it's
Right.
fertilizer, other things,
Right. And they're not always selling directly to the consumer either. So they're selling to a
Mhm.
broker or to a middleman who's dictating the price based upon the number of people who are growing. And so there's, again, you have some of that loss of control. Whereas, and this is an opportunity to set your rate to whatever you need. And the more, obviously, the more people you have coming and the more the demand you have for your particular site, obviously the more you can raise your prices too. But you have control and you're selling it directly to the consumer, and you're not it's not based upon the dictations of of the, in the same way anyway, of the
Right.
marketplace. So
Yep.
yeah.
Actually, it's true. So it's because you have this marketplace or this platform where you're we don't dictate how you need to serve your guests. You have full
Right.
control over that. And speaking of that, what's good rule of thumb for people that are looking to host, and how much should they be charging for a night?
Yeah. Well, generally speaking, I'd say probably the average of an RV park is probably around $65 a month, a day, or the evening. And so you can probably start below that, $50, $55, and that's probably a good place to start. Depending upon where you're located, how close you are to national forests, how close you are to amusement parks, to events that are taking place, that will change based upon that. Based upon your experiences, as you have people who come back, and the number of people who are trying to reserve your spot, as you become more busy, obviously that would mean that you have something special that people are wanting, and so you can obviously increase your price for that as well. And you may choose not to. That's up to you. But obviously, the supply and demand dictates that you can increase your price and still provide a good service and an enjoyable activity and opportunity for people, and that they want to pay for and they're happy paying for. So
Yeah, because I can imagine this like really honing it. If someone really honed in as a host, they honed in like, hey, they can make this in a business in itself. Just that's what, when Airbnb came into the market, there's companies that just solely, that's their whole business
hmm.
is Airbnb. A similar thing can happen with CurbNTurf, where you have these micro businesses on our platform. If you're a landowner, you could potentially set up an RV park. Obviously it depends on you know your county or whatever laws or things that may
Right.
dictate that.
Hmm.
But there's the sky's the limit essentially for a lot of agribusinesses.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's one thing I wanted to talk about is RV parks in general. So RV parks could be really hit and miss, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they have people that stay there all year round. RV parks are looking for is to fill their vacancy, right? And
Right.
so and with RVers it's seasonal. So sometimes they have high vacancies, and so they want long time renters, or they
Right.
want those long time RV travelers.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about some issues that you've seen with RV parks? Or I mean, not saying that all of them are like that,
Yeah.
but
I just say that the biggest challenge with RV parks is the information that you have available as you go and seek for what you're doing. So that's one of the reasons probably why people go back to the same RV parks over and over again. Is because they know what to expect. They don't have to rely upon what's written down, what's being advertised, what sources has compiled the information. And to an extent, I think that's what we're kind of trying to resolve as well. Because, like for instance, when I went to an RV park, it said high-speed internet, and when I got there, it was basically dial-up, 45 kilobits per second. Basically
right,
nothing. My cell phone was quicker than what they were offering. what it said was high-speed internet. So, like what we're collecting is what's the actual speed, how many kilobits up, how many kilobits down. And so the information that we're trying to provide is very specific and detailed and relevant to the people who are out there and in need of it as they're going around and parking.
Yep. Huge. The more information, the better, right?
Yeah.
Because then that way the guest is informed. They're able to know ahead of time, what to expect. They have those expectations met, versus, where with you were expecting high speed internet and all of a sudden you had, your cell phone's faster.
Right.
Well, let's talk about what? All right. So let's talk about, let me do this. Let me do another. So we are looking for hosts. So for you to sign up for hosts, where would be the best place for hosts or anyone to sign up for their listings?
Online or the app. The app is probably a good place to start, and then as you get started, you might go between the app and the computer because you want to type potentially for some of the things, and I find it more enjoyable to use a keyboard over a phone. But at times you want to go and use the app because there's nothing like a phone to get photos of areas you're walking to get GPS coordinates of where you're standing, and so there's some benefits of that as well. So it's up to personal preference, but both of those are good options.
Yep. Yeah, I would always go for the app because it literally takes 10 minutes.
Yeah.
If you have 10 minutes of your time, you're going to be able to put up a listing. Because if you have your phone out there, you take those pictures, and then we have basically step-by-step that walks you through questions based on, RVers and what their needs are. So it might seem a little more intense sometimes to go through that process, but that's more because of our guests, or it's specific to RVers.
Yeah.
So the best place would be, if you have Android, again, just go to Google Play Store. If you have any iOS devices, go to the App Store. You could find us by their name, CurbNTurf, CurbN Turf, TURF, T as in Tom, URF. Yeah, and it's an awesome app.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
So
that's what about the name real quick. I guess I might say that too. We chose the name based upon parking by curb, on public street, because you can obviously if you're going from point A to point B, you need some place to stay, and sometimes you might actually rent out the public road in front of your house, the curb. You make sure that it's available. Someone comes and parks there, and that's acceptable. And so that's the curb part of it. And then obviously the turf makes sense. You have land. And even the curb can relate to your driveway or something you have more developed than just grass. But so that's really the CurbNTurf name came from.
Yeah, I love it because we get, questions all about that all the time. What's a CurbNTurf? And it's pretty self-explanatory when we say, hey, it's like an Airbnb for RVers. They could park on your curb or your turf, whatever that you have. So we have a 5-day challenge course coming up.
Oh yeah.
Can you explain about that 5-day challenge course? What we're looking to do with that? What that's about?
It's just focused on agritourism, and the focus of it is give you 5 challenges to do something that you can do as a current agritourism farmer, or if you're wanting to get into it. And both of these cases would work, and it's things that might improve upon your revenue stream and your success and profitability for what you're doing as an agritourism. So that's the concept and the idea behind it.
Yep, and that's something we're going to be rolling out probably in the next couple months. If you're listening to this podcast, it might already be out for you now, and we'll put a link in the description so that way you could actually be able to participate in that as well.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons why I feel like CurbNTurf is so important. We want to make it a community. We have the app. We have additional information, education what we're providing to not only RVers but to agribusinesses, whether you're a farmer, a bed and breakfast. The sky's the limit. We're really trying to look for more hosts. So again, the more listings, the better, because there's a huge opportunity for you guys as hosts on the fact that there's so many RVers looking for places to go, because there's a real need and people don't realize that. You see.
Right. And even outside that, I think you sparked a thought in my mind. The whole reason why we're doing the recurring plot is for the opportunity just to give out something that's of relevance to agritourism initially anyway, and then it might change at some point to focus on some guests or some hosts, or could be anything. But right now we thought it would be a great into the agritourism community to see what other agritourism communities are doing, and to see what some things that might be of interest to you. So stay tuned for the recurring plot shows as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we plan on having, guests that, talk on marketing, how to market your business. We're going to have other, industry leaders or just business owners that are going to talk about what's worked for them. And that's kind of, the agribusiness part of what we're going to be doing on this platform.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
a lot of things to look forward to. Appreciate your time, Aaron. I know you have
Sure.
to run.
I do.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, you take care, and we'll see you at the next episode.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Yeah. All right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Right. See you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Recurring Plot, presented by CurbNTurf. CurbNTurf works like Airbnb, but we help RVers to find land where they can park when they're traveling. Make more money from your land. Please visit CurbNTurf.com to list your property.